how many years have you been in the House?
I've been in the House 18 and a half years now.
Okay.
And it doesn't seem like that long. The time is flown by. But one of the greatest privileges I've had is when I became chairman of the VA Military Construction Subcommittee, to be able to pass historic increases in commitments for better health care and benefits for our veterans and our military troops and their families. Has been a humbling honor for me.
I am interrupting.
Go ahead.
And you've got this question before, I'm sure. During the election, if the president had asked you to run as vice president with him, would you have?
If he had asked, the answer would have been yes. And I'll always consider it a privilege to have been considered. It's been a long time since a House member has been appointed as vice president. And I think what many people don't know in our district is that the reason I was considered and made it into the Final Four was not because I agreed with President Obama, then Senator Obama, on every issue. It's because I've been a champion of military troops and their families, and known as the champion in Congress for America's veterans. And there were many who felt that having a more moderate to conservative Democrat on the ticket who championed military causes, a strong national defense, and the cause of veterans would be a good balance on the ticket. So, but I will say this: every time, while it was an honor to be considered for the vice presidency, every time I get to go to a Boy Scout camp out or Little League ball game with my two young sons, I say things worked out well for us.
Well, looking towards the future, would you be interested in running for Senator Hutchinson's seat when it becomes vacant?
No.
No.
I'm deeply honored to be in public service and to not only represent our district, but to be able to chair the committee that funds $107 billion a year for our military troops, their construction, their hospitals, their housing, their daycare centers, as well as funding for our entire VA healthcare system. That's such a great honor, and I would not want to give up that privilege in order to run to be a freshman U.S. Senator.
Now, are you going to be running again?
Yes, I do intend to run for the election.
And what are your goals for this term?
Well, in this session of Congress, first is to try to represent our district effectively. And on the projects such as the stimulus program, I worked hard with state agencies to see that Johnson County received funding to move ahead with the 121 Chisholm Trail project. Working on local economic development projects that have a federal component. The partnership still one of my very highest of priorities. In terms of national issues, my first responsibility is to, with my committee assignments, is to see that we honor in a meaningful way our military troops and their families and our veterans who sacrificed so much for our country. And I think it means as much to me as any single piece of legislation I've ever passed. Earlier this summer, I wrote the law that will provide a college scholarship for every child whose mother or father has died in military service to America since September 11th of 2001. Perhaps I've done some things that have affected more people in our country, but never anything that to me is as emotionally meaningful. I just met with about 40 to 50 children yesterday at Fort Hood whose fathers were killed in combat. And knowing that I played a role in seeing that those children will be guaranteed a college scholarship was my small way of saying thank you for the incredible sacrifice they've made for our country. And I consider trying to make a difference. That's really a very high priority. I think Also nationally, I want to be one of the voices that gets us back to a game plan and a downward glide path toward a more balanced budget over the next 5 years. I was part of the bipartisan effort in the 90s that created 4 years of surpluses. I opposed some of the budgets that I believe led to turning the largest surpluses into the largest deficits in American history. And I certainly strongly opposed the congressional leadership letting the pay-as-you-go rules go out the window in 2001. That was one of the greatest single mistakes of the Hastert era in the House. It opened up the Pandora's box to allow deficit spending to go out the roof. And again, while during a time of recession, many of the most conservative economists will argue you have to help stimulate the private sector to get the economy back on its feet. I at the same time believe we have to have long-term balance in our federal budget.
You served in the military?
No, I did not. And I will spend the rest of my life trying to do everything I can to honor those who have. My father was a World War II veteran. My mentor in politics was Olenny Taggart Teague, who was known as Mr. Veteran in the Congress. One of the most decorated World War II veterans that ever served in the Congress. And I now am in my second decade of co-chairing the bipartisan House-Army Caucus. It's a group of House members dedicated to supporting our Army soldiers. I represented Fort Hood through 3 combat deployments. I've seen firsthand the sacrifice our great troops make and their families make at time of war and peace. And I've seen the continuing sacrifice of our veterans long after combat is over. And one of my top priorities this year is to, and has been for the last several years, has been to improve the mental health care services to our veterans. We did not do a good job of that for the Vietnam era veterans, and I hope we've learned that lesson. And early intervention can not only help rebuild lives, it can save taxpayers money in the long run.
I was listening to something this morning and it was talking about how tough it is for people coming, especially out of the Middle East, and coming back and trying to find a job. Military folks trying to come back and find a job. And of course, there's that mental aspect too.
Yes.
And I will tell you that I've been privileged. 13 years I managed the Fort Polk, Louisiana,
Really?
public affairs newspaper.
So you know firsthand
I've
about
seen a
military
lot of it.
sacrifice. The numbers I've seen show that if a veteran can get a job in the private sector after retiring from the military within 6 to 9 months, he or she has a far better chance of not needing mental health care services.
I can believe that.
The unemployment exacerbates the burden that our veterans are already carrying on their shoulders. And so we do need to do more in terms of providing jobs for our vets. In my subcommittee, our primary focus for the last 2 years has been to improve the VA healthcare system and to reduce the backlog, the waiting time for combat, including combat service veterans, to receive their earned benefits. There's a massive backlog, and we've tried to reduce that, put in place the mechanisms to reduce that. We've made a lot of new commitments, historic, unprecedented commitments, better health care and reduced backlog of benefits for veterans. I think that the job issue needs to be one of our highest priorities over the next 2 or 3 years.